Hey RV family, keep it I keep it tight. My name is Jay Morrison. Welcome back to the metal Tempest, and in this video I'm going to be covering the new Gavin Dance record entitled Jackpot Juicer. Along the way to follow up from their last record, Afterburner, which I thought was a damn good record and one of their better in a while, even though it had some shortcomings. This is the 10th studio-length album by the Sacramento-based band Gavin Dance. And let's be honest, anyone that is a fan of this band for pretty much their entire runtime will know that their lineup changes have been tumultuous. The way that they have shifted around, the way that they've changed clean vocalists, the way that they've changed so many things. You can't really stay in one place long consistently when it comes to Gavin Dance. But in recent memory, they have pretty much had their lineup be decently consistent with everything that they've been producing, and they've kind of gotten a really good groove where their last few records have been some of their best in a while, in my opinion. Going into Jackpot Juicer, there were a lot of very valid questions that both fans of the band and detractors of the band would have had. The first of which being, it is their longest material to date. It is over an hour's worth of material. A lot of damn tracks on this thing. Another thing is the allegations with Tilian, the lead vocalist, the clean vocalist for the band. He has been going on hiatus, so for the foreseeable future he's not going to be really performing or doing much with the band to my knowledge. And then when you put into the fold the fact that Tim, longtime bassist of the band, passed away, it can only lead to a lot of question marks. It's also the first record to feature Andrew Wells, who has been a touring guitarist for the band since 2015, but this is the first time that he has been credited on a record. And I have a lot of reservations with this record stepping into it before I even hear a single track on it. I think that Gavin Dance needs to go on some sort of hiatus after this record. I know the material here was recorded back in last year, I believe in spring, around the April time period, so this isn't necessarily new material and it wasn't made concurrently with the current state of affairs with the band. But with the passing of Tim, Tilian's allegations, his stepping away, the fact that they're immediately going into a tour and aren't really showing any signs of slowing down, I think definitely raises some red flags. Now, of course, it could be a Lorna Shore type situation where Will is a fantastic replacement for CJ, and I don't want to comment too much on the allegations to Tilian because I'm not that well versed in the subject, but by the same token, I think Gavin Dance immediately rolling so much out and showing no signs of stopping definitely showcases a little bit of determination, and they've recovered from worse, and they've recovered from many lineup changes before, so despite all of the weird question marks going into this record, is it any good? Start off by saying the singles for this record that led up to it, Cream of the Crop, and especially Die Another Day, really showed that they have a lot to them and this record wasn't going to fuck around. They have just been getting tighter and tighter and tighter ever since they've had this specific lineup. They're half parts funk and psychedelic with the math rock influence and progressive elements, and you got John and Tilian swapping back and forth. They go together like bread and butter. Tilian is an excellent vocalist and a very standout vocalist with just so much husk and natural rasp and distortion to his vocals. Every chorus that Gavin Dance writes slaps, and Die Another Day is a prime example that Gavin Dance, when they set their mind to a track and focus, there's really no beating their level of catchiness, of just hitting the mark on so many cylinders that just feels right and catchy and eclectic, but has enough technicality and progression in the riff writing to keep you coming back for the musicianship of it. It's not just mindless Rise Records post-hardcore music. Once again, Chris Crummett comes back to mix this record, and the production is just exactly what Afterburner was. It is kind of compressed, it's very EQ'd, it is a little mechanical, it is a little icy to the ears, and sometimes I really wish that Gavin Dance would open up their sound a bit more and let it be a bit more expansive so it's not just as compressed and pushed down as it is, but by the same token, it's not necessarily that noticeable of a thing. The riffs are still very audible, they slide and they do a lot of cool panning, the reverb on the vocals works, and the EQ of the vocals swapping from harsh to clean really does do good, and the progressions from verses and bridges into choruses, they really nail the mark most of the time on this record, which isn't something that they haven't done before, but it is really impressive, and something I want to point out is when you have a lot of different influences going into a singular track, and maybe you have the more understated, subdued verses from Tilian Tilian going into John's extremely, vicious and heavy, all over the place, scatterbrained sort of like bipolar-esque sound to his vocals and scatterbrained ideas, and maybe catapulting into like a bridge that breaks up the monotony and has a bit more atmosphere to it, and then a massive chorus that just is gigantic and, like I said a minute ago, very expansive. Bridging the gap between all of that is kind of like threading a needle. It sort of has to be in like a Goldilocks zone, and they do it really perfectly across this record. Can we agree on one thing though? This is John's record. Yeah, I am a massive Tilian fan when it comes to vocals, but John dominates this record vocally, dynamics-wise, and it really does feel like his for the taking. He really impressed me on the track Polka Dot Dobbins. He really has an energetic performance that is full of tenacity and rage. On the single Feels Bad Man, he really does live up to just his usual delivery, but in this chorusy, hooky way, and it's like he just burst with so much energy and so much vivid rage that adds to every single track. Even if he's staying in a similar register usually, it's the conviction that he portrays himself that comes through in full focus. And he even kind of messes around with different dynamics across the record. Pray to God for Your Mother is an example of that, where he engages in these like staccato break-up vocals sort of, and combined with the staccato delivery will sort of ascend and descend in pitch based on the instrumental. I don't want to give all of the praise to John and John alone, but I just was consistently impressed across this entire record with his consistency and his just energy. He works best with these hyper-frenetic and technical riffs on the latter half of the record that tend to be a lot more experimental. And Tilian rips every single chorus, but he's Tilian. You know exactly what to expect, and he's not necessarily doing anything that's leading him too far out of his comfort zone. He's still doing the verses and choruses that were present on Afterburner. But John, on the other hand, engages in a lot of different things that maybe weren't present on Afterburner. It's those moments of experimentation and pushing himself out of his comfort zone that makes me excited for him as a vocalist, because it's vocalists that are willing to push that envelope, willing to up the ante, that continue to impress and intrigue audiences that listen to them. I was very worried stepping into this record that the length department would be the primary thing that would set this record back. The fact that it is 18 tracks worth of material and over an hour's worth of songs. I mean, it's easy to kind of get Dance Gavin Dance fatigue sometimes. They've had very ambitious records before with longer tracks, maybe a bit longer run times, and Dance Gavin Dance records have never particularly been that short in the grand scheme of things, but nothing to this length. But I am happy to report that the later deep cuts across this record are great. Back on Deck and Current Events really blew me away with the natural progression of the tracks. They do have a great deal of technicality. The vocals really shine on these two tracks. I didn't expect two standouts, just hard-hitting barn burners, to come back-to-back so late in the track listing. And even Die Another Day isn't early in the track listing, it is pretty far into it. And if anything, I actually think the first half of this record is probably the weaker half of the record overall. The stretch between Holy Ghost Spirit, For the Jeers, and Ember really does feel like Dance Gavin Dance by the numbers. And while the biggest single leading up to this record, I would say Synergy, which has the only feature on the record, Rob from Don Brocco, it does kind of bleed into the alternative pop punkiness of Don Brocco. But the interesting thing about that is Dance Gavin Dance already kind of has this punky exterior to them, but something about this track isn't just hitting as much as I particularly wish. On the contrary though, Swallowed by Eternity and Have a Great Life end out the record on a very strong note. Swallowed by Eternity being the longest track on the record, and it's equal parts beautiful, it's harmonious, it's distorted, it's heavy, but it also prepares you for the crescendo of Have a Great Life, which for me just feels like a proper send-off for this chapter of Dance Gavin Dance. And you know, it's interesting considering they didn't particularly know what was going to happen with the band, you know, after all of like what was going to happen this year. So the fact that this is such a beautiful send-off that wraps it all in a bow for a track listing that is so long, I prefer the latter half of this record to the earlier parts. Because I think as the track listing progresses, and you can't really predict this because you don't know when what track was particularly recorded unless you were in the room or know the producers, I think the latter half of this record feels more fleshed out, more progressive, and not as cookie cutter and by the numbers. The first half of this record, tracks like Cream of the Crop, tracks like Ember, and Synergy, feel kind of like Dance Gavin Dance by the numbers, which it isn't anything bad per se, but I found myself a lot more intrigued and feeling more intimate with both the vocals and the performances musicianship-wise on the latter half of this record compared to the first half, and I think that's one big takeaway stepping into this record is if you don't particularly like the first part of it and you think that it's maybe a little bit too much like Afterburner, give the record a try. In the latter half, the progressions are great. But talking about this record and tearing apart every single track would have me here for like 40 minutes. So what I'm instead going to do to wrap up this review is I'm just going to give my overall ultimate thoughts of this record. It leaves us in an odd point in Dance Gavin Dance's discography, but I think it's better than Afterburner, and I am very impressed and surprised with how such a long track listing successfully bridged the gap between their styles. I think they sound eclectic and tight as ever. The production, while it is very equalized and very compressed, has a great resonance to it. Tilian is a phenomenal vocalist, and some of the choruses here are some of their catchiest, their most defined, their most refined, and that's how their sound sounds. It's very refined, and it feels like they fine-tweaked every little flaw out of their style and all their kinks to work like this well-oiled machine. The latter half slaps harder, it has better songwriting, and in my opinion is more experimental. But if you aren't a fan of Dance Gavin Dance, chances are you're not going to enjoy this record. I will just be honest about that. It still has John's insanely chaotic lead vocals in like the harsh department. It has Tilian's soaring high cleans in the chorus, like Seosin vibes, Era vibes. Not everyone, it's not going to be for everyone. It has sometimes the cryptic lyrics, but I did really enjoy how intimate and sort of personalized some of these lyrics were across this record. Not as out there as some of past Dance Gavin Dance tracks, where you can't really decipher what they're doing with the lyrics. This feels tangible and discernible. Now, is that to say that John's not a complete madman? No, he's still a complete madman. But this track listing serves up a very long assortment of funk and math rock inspired post-hardcore and progressive rock ragers that have a lot of beauty to them, have a lot of progression to them, and while Dance Gavin Dance isn't going to be everyone's cup of tea, I found myself coming out of this record pretty impressed. And while some of the tracks feel like Dance Gavin Dance by the numbers, and overall I feel like it's not some of their strongest material at key points, other key points feels like some of their strongest material. So overall, I just really enjoy this record, and I hope Dance Gavin Dance can bounce back even more and make something even better than this in the future, and I'm curious to see where their lineup goes from here. It could be considered a little fatigue-inducing, and maybe it is a little long-winded and could have had some tracks and some of the fluff cut through the middle, but honestly, what are you going to do? With that being said, I'm going to be giving this album a 7.5 out of 10. And that is a wrap. Have you heard this new Dance Gavin Dance record, Jackpot Juicer? If you have, let me know in the comment section below what you thought about it. I would love to discuss this record with you. Be sure to like this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe to join the review family today, and smash that notification bell to be notified of my future uploads. You know who it is. My name is Jay Morris, and I'm signing off saying farewell.